is you and you want to know what you're doing wrong and what you can be doing differently to get your business to function perfectly without you, watch to the end of this video. Let me tell you a quick story. So I almost started in Port Harcourt, and back then I had tailors working for me. I had, other staff, customer care and all, but I never had time for myself. I could not take a break off work. I was always at work. I was, everything revolved around me. I had to okay everything. I had to see through others and all of that. I had to attend to customers. I had to do a lot of things. Without me, tailors were not going to, get the job done properly. I always just had to be there. So I kept seeing posts on social media. You need to get yourself out of work. You need to do other things. You need to not focus only on production, or all those things. You need to learn how to do take care of yourself, let work function on its own, and all of that. I had a lot of those videos, and I decided to try it out because at this point I was so stressed. I barely had time for family or friends or myself, so I really needed a break. So I decided to take a few days off work. That didn't turn out well. I got a lot of calls. I got calls of, oh ma, how do you want this to be done? What color should we do? How do we attend to this client? Did you receive the order? Did you receive the money? How am I recording this? Am I doing that? At that time, I didn't know what I was doing wrong. I was just overwhelmed. I was doing a lot of things and I really needed rest. But this is the day I gave myself off, and it felt like I was still working. I really didn't know what I was doing wrong. I just felt, okay, why are these people not working? Why do they need me so much? I just felt it was my staff that were at fault. I really didn't know what I was doing wrong. I thought I had done everything needed to be done, and they weren't just working. They didn't just want to work without me. So if this is you and you want to know what you're doing wrong and what you can be doing differently to get your business to function perfectly without you, watch to the end of this video. Hello there, welcome to today's episode of Strategy Sunday. So I am so happy to be here again this week to talk about strategy. So now, in last week's video, we talked about what a strategy really is. I explained in details what it means to actually have a strategy, how you can actually come up with your strategy. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you that not all strategies are good. Some strategies are terrible. They are bad strategy. They are the ones even causing you to burn out more. They are the ones causing you to stress out more. Now, back to my story. Now, I mentioned that in Port Harcourt, I tried out something. I tried out something I saw on social media, a strategy, I'll call it, leaving work or being absent from work to see how my people can work without me, to get people, my staff or my business to run independently without me, or an increased performance and all of that. That strategy did not work. It was terrible. It was a no-no. Because it didn't help performance. It made things worse because I was still getting a lot of calls. Now let's fast forward to Abuja. When I started learning about systems and strategies, I started putting systems in place. I started, niching down. I started focusing, directing my energy to something instead of being everywhere. Strategy is not about being everywhere. It's about direction. It's about focus. It's about leverage, understanding what your power is and using it to the fullest of its potential. In Port Harcourt, we were doing everything. We're everywhere. There was no direction. Today, my tailor is doing this. Tomorrow is doing that. Next tomorrow is sewing this. The other day it's doing that. So there was no clear focus. There was no This is what Oman is about. This is what Oman does. And this is a process that we do it. They didn't have a process. There was no system. It was impossible for them to work without me. It was impossible for them to do things without asking questions, because they might do it and I wouldn't like the way they did it. They might do it and it won't turn out the way it's supposed to turn out, because they're not used to it. They are doing it in different ways every single day. They're not doing the same thing every day. So in Abuja, there was a focus. There is a process. There was a system in place. You're not just doing what you feel like you should do, or we're not just doing different things at different days. We had a direction. We had leverage. I understood what my power was, or what the power of the business was, and how we can leverage on it. We didn't just want to be everywhere. We started narrowing down. We started putting in structure. We started putting in systems. We started understanding what we were actually about. So that's the difference between Port Harcourt and Abuja. Now, here in Abuja, I don't get stressed out. My staff don't need me to be there every day to supervise what they're doing, because what they're doing is repetitive. It is the same thing. So you can't tell me that you're making a suit in different ways. It's the same structure for every suit. So you're not, doing something different. Yes, design can be different. We have different designs of suit, but it's the same structure. We have made sure that we are narrowing things down properly. We are niching down. I'm not saying that niching down is the only thing that makes a good strategy. I'll be telling you guys what makes a good strategy and what makes a bad strategy. So now let's get into what makes a bad strategy. So now, if you want to identify a bad strategy, here are the things that you would need to know. Number one, a bad strategy is a fluff. Now, let me explain that. A bad strategy is difficult to understand. It is filled with gibberish. It is filled with big English. For example, we will revolutionize, or we aim to revolutionize fashion through innovation and empowerment. That is big English. That sounds nice, but it is absolutely nothing. Makes no sense, no direction, nothing. Or we would create garments, we aim to create garments that flatter a woman's figure. Of course, what were you supposed to do before? Create garments that don't flatter her figure? Create garments that make her look shapeless? You're a fashion designer. That is your job. So if you are coming up with things like that, that's not a strategy. That's just fluff. That's just gibberish. That's just big English, or nice things that you're saying. They don't make any sense. That's not a strategy. That's not concrete action. That's not a direction. That's just words. Number two, you mistake goals for strategy. I've said this, I said it in the previous video. Your goals are not strategies. They are not, there's no your strategy. You can have a million goals. You cannot have a million strategies. Now, a goal is, I want to make 100 million naira this year. That's a goal. That's a destination. But how do you get there? Do you have a clear map, or you're just wishing for these things? That's not a strategy. That's a bad strategy. That is just you wishing. I've said it in previous videos and I'm still saying it again. Your goal is not a strategy. When you keep mistaking your goal for a strategy, it is a bad strategy. That's how you identify a bad strategy. Number three, a bad strategy fails to face the challenge. It doesn't identify the challenge. It doesn't, diagnose the problem. It doesn't say, okay, this is the problem. It just gives you wishes. It just tells you, do this, do that. It doesn't identify what exactly is the problem. That is what I see most times. People telling you, okay, you have to write this, you advertise more, do this, post more on your social media. Does that work? You've been posting on your social media, you've been creating content. Has that worked? A bad strategy does not identify the problem. Have you actually found out what the challenge is? Have you actually diagnosed the problem properly to know this is exactly what the problem is in this business, in my business? That is why I'm not getting high paying customers. That is why I'm not, my staff, they're not doing the right thing, or things are not going the way I want to, or this is why performance is not increasing. Have you found out what the issue is? A bad strategy doesn't find what the issue is. It just tells you, do this, do that, do this, increase that. No diagnosis, no proper diagnosis, no proper policy put in place. It just gives you things to do. Number 4, a bad strategy is not practical. Now, when you have strategies that are not implementable, strategies that you cannot immediately do, or actions that you cannot immediately implement, that's a bad strategy. You have actions that are not practical, things that look, too big for you to do. You can't do them with the things that you have on ground. You can't do them with, the resources that you currently have on ground. That's a bad strategy. That is something that's not going to work. That is something that's going to exhaust you. Because now I was in a position where, like, I had a lot of plans, I had a lot of things in my head. I want to do this, or things I would call strategies, but I couldn't implement them, and they were overwhelming me, because when you are thinking of these things, they look big, they are not achievable, they will overwhelm you. You have limited resources, and you have so many, or you have big things that you want to do. You want to get big influencers, you want to get high influencers, but you don't have the money. Now you're overwhelmed by those things. That is not practical. You don't even have the resources to get those influencers. Why don't you come down to somewhere that you can actually do immediately? Maybe smaller influencers. Start with smaller influencers, or start with something else that you can do immediately. A bad strategy is not practical. It is not something you can implement immediately. Number 5, a bad strategy does not recognize leverage. Now, if you want to compete, you need to be ahead of your competitor. You need to know what your strength is, what your superpower is. I would call it that. What your superpower is, and how to leverage on it, how to focus your energy on it. You need to understand what your strength is. In our previous video, I made it clear that strategy is strength against weakness. So if you don't know your strength, how do you now position yourself to compete properly? So a bad strategy does not recognize leverage. It does not recognize your power. It does not check to know what you are, what your strengths are. It just gives you rules, or things to do, without understanding how you can position yourself properly in the market or in your industry to get power, to be more at an advantage. A bad strategy does not recognize your advantage. It doesn't check for your advantage. It doesn't check for what you can possibly do differently. You have to understand your competitive advantage. If you don't have a competitive advantage, you are just running around in circles. You're not competing. You don't have any upper hand. You don't know your strengths. You don't have any upper hand against your competitors. You don't have what you're offering that your competitor is not offering. So if you don't understand that, you have a bad strategy. Now, and if you're like me in Port Harcourt, where I just decided to implement something or do something just because someone else said it, or because people said it, without actually knowing what my own issue is, understanding my challenges, understanding, defining my my issues, my challenges in business, and I just jumped into doing what I heard online, you have a bad strategy. So strategy is not a one size fits all. What works for me might not work for the other person, and what works for the one person will not work for the other person. So it's not a one size fits all. Now, these are the things that you need to know, or you that would help you identify when a strategy is bad, when it is wasting your, when it's just a waste of time, when it is just going to burn you out or stress you out the more instead of actually solving your problem or increasing performance. So now we're going to move on to what makes a good strategy. Like in the previous video, I talked about what a strategy is, and in that video, if you follow that process, you are already on the path of having a good strategy. You're already on the path of, getting a strategy that works. But I'm going to still outline the things that actually makes a good strategy. Please go back to that video so you understand these things, because I'm not going to be explaining them in this particular video. One, a good strategy has a diagnosis. It follows the framework, the three-part framework that I said in the other video. You have to diagnose properly, you have to come up with a guiding policy, then you have to come up with coherent action steps. A good strategy outlines your leverage. It outlines your competitive advantage, because that is what you're going to use to increase performance. So if you don't know what your strength is, you're just building on sand. There's nothing you're holding on to. So you have to understand, what exactly is my strength. So a good strategy maps out your leverage, maps out your strength, maps out your competitive advantage. What do you have against your competitor? Because I'm always of the motion that when you are in a particular industry or when you're doing business, don't strive to compete. Strive to be different. Strive to, bring something different to the table, or be ahead of your competitor. Don't just go into the market and you're selling the same thing everybody is selling, or you're offering the same thing everybody is offering. Look for there is always something in you or something in your business that can differentiate you from the other person. So that is where you are supposed to be focusing your strength on. Strategy is about focusing your strength. So focusing on your strength. So if you are not identifying what exactly is your strength, what exactly is your leverage, what exactly is your competitive advantage, you are not actually being strategic. You are just being like every other person. Strategy is about clarity. Now, I would take myself, for example. Before now, I was always running around in circles. I was always confused. I know that there are business people like me who have experienced extreme level of confusion. I was always confused. What do I do? How do I start? Where do I go to? I had so many things in my head. I had so many ideas, so many concepts, so many things I wanted to do, and so many things I called strategy. But I didn't know how to go about it. I wanted to consult this person, consult that person. But once I understood that a strategy is not just about having things in your head. It's not about having ideas in your head. It's about being clear, leveraging. It's about focus. One thing about focus is that is what actually brings the clarity. When you are focused on something, you become clearer in that part. So strategy made me understand clarity, or get to a point of clarity when I am not just everywhere anymore. I am now somewhere, one place, doing one thing or two things max, or just building around a particular thing instead of trying this, trying that, trying this. So if you are still in a place where your staff, they're calling you every day, there is no structure in place, there's nothing repetitive, you don't have any clear focus, you're still getting tired and burnt out, you're still confused. I was confused. I would tell you, I was so confused. It's I'm not saying that I'm in a place where I'm no longer confused. It's a gradual process. And in this series, each episode, it's us finding clarity. It's us understanding that, you can build something with clarity. You can build something with intention. It's not just about, I want to build something, or we get a lot of, we get bombarded a lot on social media with how we should do things and how we shouldn't do things. But here, I'm not here to tell you, oh, do it this way or don't do it that way. I'm here to show you ways that I have tried, or rather, steps that you can take to get to clarity. I'm not here to tell you, oh, how to increase your followers, or how to, get your market to this particular place, or how to get more customers. I'm here to show you that all of that is possible when you get to a point of clarity. Now, look at your business this week and ask yourself, is this built to give me peace or to keep me spinning? You already know what burnt out looks like. Now, it's time to build what freedom feels like. This is Strategy Sunday. Subscribe, like, and share. Let's keep building intentionally and powerfully. Until next Sunday, bye.